Are you ready to change your life, but don't know how to start? Is your stress and worries keeping you awake at night? Have you been battling grief, anxiety, or depression all alone? Have you lost touch with your own sense of being or spirituality? Soul Free Therapies offers professional and affordable live video streaming counseling and coaching services from the comfort of your own home. Sessions offered in English, Spanish, and Portuguese. Go to our website at www.soul-free.com and book your first session today.
Hey, check out our brand new sponsor, Dynamic Solutions 2. That's the number 2. They offer a life-changing, dynamic financial solution. The finest in fast, professional, affordable credit repair. Is your credit in bad shape? Do you need a new car? Ready to buy a new house? You want to rent an apartment? Are you going to apply for a job? Any one of these activities, they're going to ask for a credit report and then check out your credit score. Let Dynamic Solutions 2 erase your negative credit remarks. They have affordable monthly prices. They accept Visa, MasterCard, PayPal options available. You go to www.dynamicsolutions, that's the number 2.com, or call 424-888-2820. 424-888-2820. Now, if you enter promo code ED or you mention Ed Opperman, you get a 10% discount. How's that? You get a free consultation, all negative items removed, get back in positive credit position. Dynamic Solutions 2, life-changing dynamic financial solutions. 424-888-2820. Tell them Ed Opperman sent you. You get a 10% discount.
Hey, you, podcast listener. This is your last chance. After this, there is no turning back. Take the blue pill. You wake up in your bed and go back to listening to mundane podcasts that won't challenge your religious beliefs and your so-called truths about reality, the universe, and consciousness. Take the red pill. Subscribe to the Event Horizon podcast, hosted by Mark Anthony Peterson, and he will show you how deep the rabbit hole goes. Event Horizon takes a walk into the paranormal with a splash of conspiracy. It's the podcast that would be born if David Icke and the X-Files had a baby. Subscribe to the Event Horizon podcast by Mark Anthony Peterson on Spreaker, iTunes, Spotify, iHeartRadio, CastBox, Stitcher, or any of your other favorite podcast platforms. Remember, all we are offering is the truth, nothing more.
It's the Opperman Report. Join digital forensic investigator and PI Ed Opperman for an in-depth discussion of conspiracy theories, strategy of New World Order resistance, high-profile court cases in the news, and interviews with expert guests and authors on these topics and more. It's the Opperman Report. And now, here is investigator Ed Opperman.
Okay, welcome back to the Opperman Report. I'm your host, private investigator Ed Opperman. We're here with Richard Stratton. He's the author of Smuggler's Blues, a true story of the Hippie Mafia. Fascinating stuff. And I can't thank you enough, Richard, for coming here and telling me all your stories.
My pleasure.
Hey, because, you got to realize, I was a kid, when I knew Dana and AJ and all these guys. These guys were heroes to me, So, you're a legend to me, my friend. And I really look up to you in a lot of crazy ways that maybe people can't understand. Now, we were talking about, okay, the Colombian would dry out, no one would care. But now when you start to get into the good Sensimilia, the exotic marijuana, sometimes it would start to grow mold on it. Did you ever run across that?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, no, that was it. If pot is not carefully cured, it's not properly cured, it retains too much moisture.
Right.
And then it's put in sacks or, then put in plastic. Wrapped in plastic, it'll get moldy, and I've had that happen. We open up bales, and oh my God! And this one big load of Colombian pot that we brought in, one of the last big loads that I did. It was an offload actually that I did up off the coast of Maine. It was over 10 tons. It was completely spoiled. It was soaked in bilge water and mold, and it was just we had to end up just digging a big hole and and dumping it in there. Couldn't sell it. So, that was definitely spoilage was a big problem. Whenever you're dealing with, with a plant, with vegetable matter, there's always issues of spoilage and mold and any kind of contamination that might get in there. And of course, the Fed started spraying paraquat. Yeah, so that became a big issue. I can remember being in Mexico one time down in the Sierra Madre del Sur, way, way up high in the mountains, where I used to buy this great pot that came from Guerrero, Acapulco Gold and whatnot, sent to me. And I was standing with the guy who was the grower, who was a real sweet guy, great guy. His whole village basically lived on the money that they made from growing and selling pot. And we looked across the valley, and he pointed to the hillside on the opposite side of the valley that looked like a big black smear. And basically what had happened was that they had sprayed that whole side of the mountain with paraquat. And little kids who were, like maybe been working out in the fields, who inhaled the paraquat would get sick and sometimes die. Terrible. When you think of what the money and the lives and the huge amount of waste that's gone into waging this ridiculous war on plants. I mean, the whole war on drugs, from my perspective, is completely a fiasco and a very expensive and destructive one. I mean, it's created this huge prison system, this gulag in America, what I call the American gulag of prisons. I mean, in the 1980s, when I was locked up from 1980 to 1990 when I got out, the prison population expanded by tenfold. There was only 30,000 federal prisoners at the time I went in. There was over 300,000 federal prisoners by the time I got out, 8 years later. And largely, 90% of them were nonviolent drug offenders. The whole war on drugs has been unbelievably destructive to this country. You think of the families that are affected by it. You think of the number of people who've died or end up dying in prison. And people can say, oh, well, you did something illegal, you should go to jail. Yeah, maybe you should go to jail. But for that length of time, and maybe we should look and say, well, maybe the laws are wrong. Maybe, this whole idea of my country, right or wrong, to me, that's not an American attitude. To me, the American attitude is question authority. You can't necessarily trust people who run this country. A lot of times they don't know what they're doing, or they have some kind of hidden agenda. I think this is probably more pertinent right now when we're in the middle of this presidential campaign and we're looking at these alternatives that we have here, on either side. I'm not happy. Bill Clinton and his wife. Well, who's Bill Clinton? Bill Clinton was the guy who said, I didn't inhale. Bullshit, you didn't inhale. I knew the guy who sold him pot over when he was at Oxford, at Cambridge, or wherever. He used to sell him ounces every couple of weeks. If he wasn't inhaling, why was he coming back and buying more? He was a liar. His wife was not to be trusted. These people can't be trusted. And the other guy, the maniac on the other side, is no better. He's worse. So, I think as Americans, we have a responsibility in living in a participatory democracy to always question those people who are in power. And the people who look at me and say, oh, well, you broke the law. You're a criminal. You're an outlaw. You know what? So what? There used to be laws in this country that women couldn't vote. There used to be laws in this country that black people couldn't sit in the bus and couldn't go to the counters and eat with white people. These were laws that existed. There's still laws in this country that are completely ridiculous and don't deserve to be there. So Americans, I think, have a responsibility to break the laws that are wrong, to participate in the democracy, and to fight against this totalitarian mentality that we have that ultimately, wants to take over and tell you how to live your life.
I hear you, man. We got to resist. We got to resist the oppression that we're under. But I tell you, the headline for this show is, if he wasn't inhaling, why'd he come back and buy more? That's the greatest line. I love it. But now back to your case, though. Okay, your case. Now, first, a couple of things. Now, was there any evidence of wiretaps in your case when they arrested you?
No, there was no evidence of wiretaps. Not on my phone. None on my phone. There were some tapes that had been made, and it's kind of an unfortunate story, but There was a guy who was working for me who was a money courier. Basically, that was all his job. He swept money around from this country back to the Lebanese. He took money he went to Canada and picked up money from my people there. That was what he did. He was a money guy. And he was very friendly with Mailer. In fact, I ended up hiring him as a favor to Mailer because he wait a minute, I lost him here.
Okay.
Yeah, can you hear me? I dropped my phone.
No, I hear you fine, yeah.
Okay. So anyway, this guy ended up making some tapes. He was introduced to a guy that was an undercover DEA agent. Now, I had already been arrested. I was arrested in Los Angeles. That's another whole story. But I'm in custody out there. And I get in touch with this woman that I work with, my girlfriend. I tell her, whatever you do, reach this guy, Buzz. I call him Biff in the book, but his name was Buzz. And tell him whatever he does, don't speak to the Lebanese because the Lebanese are no good. The only reason I got arrested was because they set me up. And I knew that. So I made sure that the word got back to him, not to deal with the Lebanese. What does he do? He has a meeting with this guy, the Lebanese guy, and he says, oh, yeah, I heard from Mr. Richard. He tells me I shouldn't be meeting with you. He doesn't trust you. He said, I think he's just paranoid. He's overly worried. Then that guy introduces him to an undercover DEA agent posing as a drug dealer wanting to buy hashish, right? And now the hash is all gone at this point. I don't even know where they thought they were going to get this hash. They start to make this deal. They arrest this guy, and they say to him within 5 minutes after they arrest him, we want you to get Norman Mailer on the phone. And arranged to meet with Norman Mailer, which he did. And they wired him up. They wired him up with, undercover wire, sent him into this lunch meeting with Mailer, and he's sitting there trying to get Mailer to implicate himself on tape, saying, well, Richard was smuggling hash, and blah, 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 and this, that, and the other. And Mailer kept saying, listen, whatever Richard was doing, that's Richard's business. I'm not going to sit here and say anything about this or that. So the tapes turned out to be inconclusive, and the government tried to claim that this guy had warned Mailer that he was wired, which may or may not be true. I don't know. But those were the only tapes that they were able to introduce, was the tapes that were made with this undercover DEA agent and this guy, where he was saying, yeah, Stratton brought in this huge load of hash. There's some of it still left out on Staten Island. There wasn't. I don't know what he was talking about. He was that far away from it. He was only a money courier. He wasn't really part of the main part of the conspiracy. But those were the only tapes that they had, and I was not on any of those tapes. So the case against me actually in New York was remarkably weak. And there was no physical evidence. But, you get a bunch of people in the stand who say, yeah, that's the guy right there. He's the boss. Everything that happened to him. Then they brought this real estate agent in from Texas who said, yes, I sold the guy 3 ranches over a period of 4 or 5 years, and he always came with, briefcases full of cash. So that was the kind of evidence that they had against.
Who was your lawyer?
Well, I actually represented myself.
Really?
I had an idiot for a client and a maniac for a lawyer. So I used to tell people I was my own client and my own lawyer. But meanwhile,
why? You had a ton of money. Why couldn't you hire a really top lawyer? All the left court and those guys. Why not?
Well, here's what it was. There were 4 co-defendants and me. So there's a total of 5 people on trial. Those 4 defendants underneath me had the top lawyers in New York City, including Ivan Fisher, who was a dear friend of mine. Now, I was charged under the kingpin statute with supposedly being the boss of those 4 guys.
Right.
So our strategy was, when I met with the lawyers, I was like, look, if I sit there and some lawyer gets up and talks in my behalf,
right,
the jury keeps looking over at me, they're going to say, yeah, that guy must be the boss. But if I get up and question these witnesses, and if I can speak directly to the jury, I got a chance to beat this thing. And they agreed with me. They all agreed with me, and they said, you know what, we think you're right. Meanwhile, I had already been convicted and sentenced to 15 years up in Maine. So my defense in New York was what they call an affirmative defense, where I said to the jury, yeah, I'm a marijuana smuggler. I admit it. I smuggled marijuana and hash, but I got convicted of it and sentenced 15 years up in Maine. And this trial here is a creation of the government.